Okay, so this video is going to be a bit of a weird one, because here's the thing. I basically got two different videos I can make. One, a full critique of Limbus Company as a live service game. Two, talking about why I feel like giving out criticism of gacha games is pointless. Now, to the astute observers, that probably sounds like the stupidest thing you've heard in a minute on account of the fact that the two videos literally are at odds with one another. Why would I spend time criticizing the game when I believe it's pointless? Now, the easy answer is, I like chatting shit, there's no two ways about it, but the actual answer is, I feel like criticism only becomes pointless when the reaction to it is people viewing that criticism as an attack on the game. When that is how it is viewed, many people don't care to understand the criticism but instead do anything they can to invalidate it. So the game plan is to show why I believe that perspective of viewing any criticism as an attack is dumb to then hopefully, doubt this is gonna happen unless I fucking max up my stats and charisma, but hopefully I can make people want to listen to criticism of the game and not see it as a personal insult to then make the Limbus section of this video have meaning. However, at the same time, putting the game plan aside, I don't want to just make a video solely about Limbus because I don't like putting myself in a box to just focus on one game of 13 clinically insane individuals. Which is why in this video I'm going to be criticizing the game Limbus Company. If you have not heard about it, don't worry, grab onto my hand tightly, you're in for a wild ride of explanations. And the explanations have a reason because I want to point out a big sentiment of anti-criticism I've seen towards the game from the community. But here's the thing. It's not just the Limbus Company community I've seen with this perspective. Most game communities out there, or at the very least, most gacha game communities, seem to be adverse to criticism. So basically, that's what this video is gonna be. A feedback loop of criticism into people ignoring it, into the state of the game, into more criticism. Then hopefully by the end of this mess you could understand what I'm trying to say. Now in terms of a title, fucked if I know what this shit's gonna be called. The Limbus criticisms you need to hear, why gacha game criticisms are doomed. The toxic Yuri/Yaoi depending upon the reader's preference between Limbus Company and true honest to our Lord Jesus criticisms of it. Probably won't be using that last one, it exceeds the character limit by a hair. So, okay, let's talk about pointlessness minus the existential dread that we are just floating on a rock in space and this video really means nothing to the rest of your life, which also means nothing in the grand scheme of the universe. Now, Limbus Company is a live service game, gacha to be specific. Now, the one thing people always say about Limbus is that it's a gacha game made by people who do not know how to make a gacha. To the uninitiated, that sounds like an insult. To those who have dealt with the soul-sucking practices of gachas, you can think of no greater compliment. Now, the saying comes from the fact that the gacha of Limbus is pretty easily circumvented. All gachas plan out how many rolls you as a player will need to spend to get whatever new PNG they dangle in front of you. But Limbus Company on the other hand has a spark system where you can just get the unit with shards, currency that you can get for free or at a boosted rate after buying the season pass. Now this creates a game in which I was able to get basically every unit in Ego, like a special piece of equipment, in it without really spending much money. Now of course the fact that I've been playing since release has helped and Lord knows new players are definitely not in the same position right off the get-go, which we'll talk about later, but in total I've spent, I believe about $80, probably less, over the course of 2 years for playing this game. Which, yeah, okay, screw gacha games. That's a damn good deal for any live service unless the name of it starts with a W and is called Warframe. But here's the problem. That statement of a gacha made by people who do not know how to make a gacha game is a double-edged sword. As on the other hand, it also explains why the content in the game is more dry than eating dehydrated sand. Now that may sound like an exaggeration, but let me say something. Limbus has been out for almost 2 years at this point. Do you know how many new permanent game modes have been added to the game which weren't in it on launch? 2. Refraction Railway, which I can't say without sounding like the fucking dedicated Wham kid, and Luxcavation. And here's the fun part. Luxcavation is the basic farming stages of the game, for character progression materials. You know the shit every gacha has? Yep, this one didn't have it on launch, so technically, it's a new feature. And the other feature is not even around all the time. Railway is basically the deadbeat dad for the community. When he shows up for our birthday, we love to have him, but then he disappears and kinda just leaves us until he comes back with the milk sometimes later. And the updates to the Railway, which is basically just a gauntlet of enemies where you try to get the lowest turn count you can, the updates to it in which we get more enemies, takes about half a year. I am unfortunately not lying. So out of the 2 new things we have gotten since the launch of the game, one is a basic farming node, and the other is a drunken dad. Wait, that would kind of mean he beats us. Well, R2 was a thing, so yeah. The other is a drunken dad that takes a while to find the milk. And somehow this game has survived with just that as new content for 2 years. Now personally, I'ma just say it, if I was a live service dev, I would be studying all fucking forms of witchcraft in this ethereal plane and the next to have the chance this game has. Because despite any flaws whatsoever for this game, it is not dying. In fact, it is actively growing as a game. We are consistently hitting new highs in the player count, with the game consistently outputting no new game modes whatsoever. Which, a part of me is glad to see that for 2 reasons. 1, I really like the game and don't want it to die, but 2, this deadass shows how amazing the game's story is and points to the fact that most other games have not even gotten remotely close within the writing department, because Limbus Company is living proof you can botch the game part of the game to high hell. But if you cook a 10-star meal for the story, you're gonna keep people playing. And the second part of that message, I really want other games to study, because I'm seeing some of y'all bitches with 8 times the writing team size and 20 times the fucking disappointment in the new stories you're delivering, but I ain't gonna talk about that now. As what I want to focus on is the fact that what I just said of the game part of the game being underwhelming is either not widely accepted or it is accepted and some players are completely and entirely forgiving of it. Let me explain. So part 1, Limbus Company has no content, and yeah, saying that is of course a bit exaggerative, but not as much as you're imagining. You see, here's a calendar for the past 2 years. Beautiful calendar. Now in green are days we've had new content to play in Limbus. In red, days we've had nothing new and just played Lux plus weekly mirror dungeons. And this graph is assuming one thing, that most pieces of new content provide a week of enjoyment or something to do with them for that week. Now here's the thing, on average for a Limbus update, the content takes, I'd say, about 5 to 10 hours to clear. Kinda depends. Like New Railway, 3 to 4 hours if you could hit the turn count first try. Intervalos, probably around 5 hours of reading, taking into consideration the fact I'm streaming them, so I'm talking with chat. And the grind for event stuff really depends. At times it's been terrible, at others pretty damn quick, so it's hard to pin down a specific number for it. But then, for the actual content itself, there's been some events we've had recently, like the Christmas event rerun, where it took me about an hour pressing win rate, which is auto battle, to get through the new content of the rerun, the hard mode stages. And that rerun did make the story in it voiced, as when it first released it didn't have any voiceovers, but I don't care to count the fact that the story was voiced on the rerun as new content either. To me, that is content I just don't care to interact with because I've already read the story. But the point is, how much new content we get from these updates varies, but on average, I'd say it takes like 2 days of reasonable playing to really get them over and done with. Like, I ain't even talking 12-hour gaming sessions here. Overall, they're pretty small in terms of content you do in them. So here's a new calendar with the content the game has, but new events are only treated as providing 2 days of new content. Only exception is new Kanto releases. I count each part of those as giving a full week of content, so 3 weeks in total. Now, do they actually provide 3 weeks of content? God no, it took me 17 hours and 30 minutes to stream Kanto 7, as I was also fucking around with chat and maybe possibly sneaking in some karaoke at the end. But I'ma still count them as 3 weeks because the release cycle of new Kantos was splitting it into 3 parts, works well, and I don't know what else they can do in between those drops to really give us more. But this shows the problem of the game. We unironically have dead months. Now, I've heard gacha players complain about having dead weeks where there's nothing new for the game, yet Limbus has dead months. Plural. Or months where we get like one update that has, again, maybe like 5 hours of new content to really play with. And to be entirely clear, this is not me saying new events need the grinding to be like 50 hours long to clear the shop. Pressing win rate on the same fight 20 times over as I watch YouTube is not content I really care much for. And here's the thing, people don't mind this. Well, some do, but whenever I point out the lack of content in the game, I've always been met with one saying people use in defense. Well, there's some others I'll get to, but this is the main one. Project Moon is a small indie company. Therefore, the painted red calendar is understandable given the size of the company. At current, Project Moon has 47 people according to GameJob, a website they are using to hire more people. Get to that later. And for 47 people, this amount of content makes sense. It's reasonable to be giving out to the player base. However, Limbus Company makes millions just by mobile revenue alone, and for PC revenue, it can be found on Steam's bestsellers list. So the company makes a lot of money. So much to where on a live stream the CEO of it did a couple of months ago, he said the company cannot make a single dime, not make any profit, and be able to continue services for 3 years. They have such a surplus to where they would be able to do that. So why do they still only got 47 employees? Well, the answer can be found in that same stream. The CEO says he doesn't wish to hire more because he doesn't want to view his employees as numbers. And it's definitely a perspective. Like, okay, here's the thing. I ain't a CEO, so I can't really speak from experience and say it's right or wrong, but I can say that for a game which has months of nothing new happening, maybe hiring more employees when you have such a surplus of money would be a good idea. And to be fair, they are. That stream was half a year ago where they said they have 45 employees in Project Moon's headquarters, others on their restaurant, and now we have 47. So we got 2 new employees over the course of half a year, and eventually we're going to get 3 more. Not all of the 3 are coders that can work on making new content, but we're going to be up to 50. Now, here's the thing. I don't want to sit here and pretend to know X, Y, and Z about gameplay development, but I think I can logically say one thing. When people point to the lack of content in the game, it gets excused by others saying Project Moon is a small indie company. And I think that excuse is dumb because they are one of choice. They make millions, have a surplus of money, and choose to hire 2 people over the course of half a year. Now the reason is because the CEO doesn't want to view them as numbers, which is understandable, but that means the lack of hiring is a choice. One that has caused the game to have dead months. So I don't care for people excusing it by saying the company's too small to make more content, because that shit's a choice. They choose to be small, so they have to deal with the problems and criticisms of being small. But that's what I'm talking about. When people see the criticism for the lack of content in the game, the first response isn't wondering what content they'd like to see in the game. The first response is saying that that criticism is invalid because they're a small indie company. Let alone the fact we know the code of the game and know they can make an entirely new game mode right now with just using their existing code, but we'll get to that later. However, this response shows criticism is not seen as something meant to improve the game, but instead something against the game, an attack on it. And that makes people not wish to criticize it. So now a year ago, I had a friend who made a video criticizing Limbus, and here's the thing, right? In that video, there are criticisms I don't agree with, others that have aged really damn well. But people despised my friend due to that video, and it wasn't even for the criticisms. Well, not entirely. You see, he said his honest thoughts about the game and people hated those thoughts, but the response wasn't attacking those ideas, it was attacking him as a person. People lied about him actually playing the game, said he never played Limbus Company. The motherfucker has almost 700 hours of playing it despite quitting after the first anniversary. Then I've seen people say he's a grifter of hating the game, using his name as an insult in posts before as well. He's basically had so much harassment by saying his dislike towards the game, his criticisms of it. Not many people went to attack the ideas, but instead aimed at the person saying them. Now fast forward a couple months after that video and a couple of months prior to this one, I made this Twitter post, saying how Limbus is in a state where it needs criticism to be said of it, but people are worried to say it due to the harassment they would receive. Now, in response to that post, some people said harassment doesn't happen to those who criticize the game. Let's ignore how one of my most viewed videos literally recaps the harassment I've seen from some people in the community. Now, to clarify, I decided to make a post talking about what my friend went through. The replies, they said he deserved it because his criticism was ass. Now, I'm going to keep it 100 with you. It's quite frankly hilarious people said harassment over criticism never happens, and the immediate response to seeing one, singular, example where it did was to shit talk that person, saying how they deserved it. And unfortunately, that's not the only example I have. Now, if we're to operate under the idea that being attacked from saying you dislike a game is fine so long as your criticism is invalid, broken logic to start, but whatever, what if that criticism comes from a valid source? So, a bit more than a month ago, someone cleared Refraction Railway 4 with the shortest turn count possible, 26. And they said they don't like the current state the game is in. Someone asked them what they meant, so they elaborated, saying how the combat system is flawed to where strategy was only about 30% of the battle in getting this record. The rest was RNG resetting, which for a game that involves extensive team building and strategy, making RNG feel like the deciding factor for the most skillful thing you can do in it is hardly ideal. The response? Some acted like the RNG they were talking about is only present for this type of run. And it's true that you'll have to deal with RNG a lot more here, but these factors for RNG are still very present even in normal gameplay. More on that later. Someone else equated doing that run to a challenge run like doing Dark Souls 3 hitless on a Guitar Hero controller. What are we doing with that comparison? Another one saying the RNG was there because they were speedrunning. They weren't. It was a low turn count record that took 2 months of RNG resets, And even then, some games are mostly skill and strategy for a speedrun. A comment saying it's fine because Library of Verona had more RNG checks, and for the sake of this video, I cannot go into why I feel this is just factually wrong about the two games. It'd take too long. But all of those replies are calling the person who's saying that criticism dumb, or saying that what they're doing, low turn count, is the only reason they're dealing with these problems. No one is actually aiming at the criticism and understanding where it's coming from. There's a lot of, oh, this is a problem because of X, Y, and Z and it's your fault, instead of taking in the perspective of someone who just dived fully into the team building and gameplay aspects of Limbus to get this record. Because here's the thing. Are they min-maxing RNG to get this record, leading to them having to deal with that a lot more than what a regular person would need to? Entirely. Also at the same time, are there aspects of RNG in the game that actively go against strategy to where a bad roll can actively hurt you? Also yes. I've seen people lose entire runs because the game rolled the 5% tails chance when they were at 45 SP. In case I sound like I just spoke Minecraft enchanting table to you, Limbus has a mechanic where your attacks are given strength by all or nothing coin flips. If it's a positive coin and you roll heads, you get strength. Tails, you get depression. But there's a mechanic called SP that increases your percent chance to roll heads based on the number. So at max, 45 SP, you have a 95% chance for your coins to gain power. Though you start fights at 0 SP, meaning you have a 50-50 to gain power, and if you start winning clashes, you get more SP. But if you lose them, you get negative SP, meaning the chance to roll tails increases by that negative number. So at base, the main thing combat revolves around is RNG. But even outside of that, there's RNG in other aspects. If there's a skill that inflicts, let's say fragile, and you get that skill when the enemy is staggered, you have the chance to deal a ton of damage. But if the center who has that skill speed is lower than everyone else's, then that fragile won't really do much, as it will be applied at the end of your attacks. And on the other hand, if they're the fastest on the team, it's gonna carry its weight. And that damage boost might just let you end a fight early, straight up skip the mechanics in it, changing the fight entirely. Now that's not me saying we need to eliminate all RNG in the game or that speed values inherently need to be set to whatever per center, but that is me saying one thing. In basic gameplay, RNG is apparent. And if you get lucky, you may very well win a fight multiple turns before if you didn't get lucky. I mean, how many times have you as a player gone into a combat node, saw your rolls go to shit, and then just reset to not deal with that? RNG is very much present to players of any skill level when it comes to Limbus. So dismissing concerns about the game's fundamental over-reliance on it, I mean, dear God, the combat system is literally built off an all or nothing coin system. To ignore that and say the player only has RNG concerns because they strategized the fuck out of the game and did something no one else will be able to beat is wild. Yet people find the need to entirely devalue the criticism rather than taking a rational approach to it or to try and understand it. And honestly, there's more examples I could bring up too. There's other videos I've seen that have had criticisms for the game until those criticisms resulting in some of the least productive conversations the human race has ever bore witness to. So for the sake of brevity, I won't be talking about them because we're already 3.9k words into the shit, so moving on. So now I'm gonna go over the criticisms I have of the game after playing it since release, which, yeah, here's the thing, gonna have to go over the checklist. I played LobCorp and Library of Verona years ago, then got into Limbus, checked out Leviathan, Wonderlab disappeared into the ether before I could read it, so nothing there. But the reason I find I need to say this is because I feel like if I don't, people will say I hate the game or just ignore the criticisms I do have. Granted, one would hope that wouldn't happen considering the videos I have on my channel where I give the game nothing but praise, but I think it's likely some people are going to go off in that direction. So for the criticisms, absolutely zero problem whatsoever for the story. That shit is beyond a masterpiece. It's not even remotely fucking close. In a time where I feel like most gacha games are making more bland and bland stories where they try to just one-up each other in the suffering Olympics to make their gacha game the especially sad one where everyone cried, Limbus stands out as having a story that has consistently stayed as one of the best I've seen. At this point, most gachas are literally just trying to make emotional moments, but Limbus makes those emotional moments have actual fucking meaning. So if you wanted to play the game purely for the story, you will be happy with this game. But that's also where I gotta worry. You see, as with any game, the combat is steadily getting harder. Now, to be honest, I think, outside of some particular battles, the game is piss easy. You really don't need to be fucking Tony Stark to be clearing these stages. No higher form of intellect is needed, especially in the face of how win rate will more than likely win the game for you. Now that's not to remove how RNG can still fuck you over. Dear lord, it can. You can be doing everything right, but RNG can change the fight drastically, which then directly takes away from the strategy. And the RNG also means that if fights end up getting harder, you're gonna need more strategy. Then from there, it and how it can hurt your strategy will really only become more apparent. However, here's the thing. I only think the game is piss easy because I have leveled units. If my units were not maxed out and I didn't have all the best egos, well, to be honest, all egos except a few, it'd be drastically more difficult. And the only reason I was able to really get this built account is because I play mirror dungeons. Okay, that sounds like I just an ad for, okay, I don't mean to come out here and tell you mirror dungeons will make your dick start working again. What I mean to say is to stay with the progression and steady difficulty climb of the game, you need to do mirror dungeons. They give you the items you use to buy identities and egos. They are beyond important, which then brings up a problem. What if you don't like interacting with mirror dungeons, or more generally, what if you don't really enjoy the dailies of the game? Like, if we're to treat Limbus Company as a story-based gacha where you should just play for the story, I think people who have that perspective are gonna get waffle stomped after not having done mirror dungeons to get the new strongest units or egos, and not having done Lux to level up their units. And this ain't even accounting for the fact that buying the Battle Pass triples your rewards from mirror dungeons, so free-to-play players will need to clear more of them or be more reserved in what they can claim from their boxes. But the problem with all this is if players can't clear the story stages of the game, they'll just go watch the cutscenes on YouTube. Which, let me personally say, as someone who used to upload me going through them, a lot of people want to watch it, which confused me at first to see this view count on a basically unedited video, but then I realized some people don't want to interact with the game part of the game and just want the story. So what's the point of me saying this? Am I saying the game needs to have an easy mode or a story-based mode? Not in the slightest. I mean, I'm not against it, because if they did implement it, it wouldn't really affect me in the slightest. I really got no reason to be against it, and if it makes people more easily treat the game like one that is story first, everything else second, that'd be nice for them, so I'd be down to see it. But at present, that's not the case. You need to interact with the gameplay to then be able to clear the story, what most people come for. And the reason as to why I make that clear is because I see people saying that the gameplay of Limbus is secondary, so why do changes to that matter when the story is what everyone actually cares for? When in actuality, you need to interact with the gameplay for the sake of the story, so changes to it are not negligible. So what are the problems with the gameplay? Well, as I said, the game's been out for 2 years and we've only gotten 2 new gameplay modes that weren't out on release. You know what else we've gotten though? 5 different versions of Mirror Dungeon. 5. Some with minimal changes, others with big ones, but one thing is apparent. The game revolves around mirror dungeons. Like, when you peel the layers back, oops, it's all just mirror dungeons. And here's the thing. I don't hate mirror dungeons, but them being really the only thing we have to do creates a problem, as basically their endgame content, at least hard mode mirror dungeon is. And you could say Refraction Railway is that, but I'm gonna keep it 100. It makes me pretty depressed to say that all the endgame content in Limbus is an event that runs every few months, which consists of like 10 stages. Which is why to me, I view mirror dungeons as a thing you'll be interacting with the most at endgame, because it's basically the only thing to interact with, but at the same time, it's piss easy. Like, unless you choose a pack that is terrible, like our Forest pack with a sinking team so the enemy just spams corrosions at you, you're going to be able to auto this all with a fully built team. Maybe needing to look over the final boss fight or two, but you're going to be good aside from that. But this creates a problem. It makes every mirror dungeon run feel the same. At least, to me. I run a bleed team because Manager Dawn has immense aura that I love to see, but every run with it feels the same. I aim for the same gifts and I'm able to get them all. Now where my run would change is which enemies I face, but the thing is, because it's so easy and I spend 99% of my run clicking auto, the fights don't actually feel different. Like, on paper they are, but when I am watching a movie and only paying attention to Limbus to press P plus enter, the fights aren't really holding that much of an identity, because they can't. I'm not giving it attention. So what would the solution be? Well, make Mirror Dungeon much harder. Would I want to see that? God no. Here's the thing. A certain amount of difficulty would be needed for Mirror Dungeon runs to display a hint of really any difference when it comes to your runs. But if they make it hard, that would be annoying as hell because it's also a weekly farming node. It's something the players need to do weekly to get the identities and resources they want. So if you make it hard enough to where you gotta sweat to finish it, sure, it would have more differences per run, but it would also be annoying as shit to do weekly. Also, new players who gotta do it to really get good units would struggle so much more to clear it. But that's a problem with the game. It is all built around mirror dungeons, and because of that, they can't really get an identity of their own. They just become win rate simulators. All eggs are put into the basket of mirror dungeons, and that basket has fucking holes in it. And this is not even counting another problem of the game, which is the fact that when it comes to building a team, good fucking luck if you're a new player. You see, banners in the game aren't focused around building a team. They're focused around the characters, well, some excluded. I'd say when Blade Lineage dropped, and I suppose again right now, is the closest we've gone to a team-oriented banner, which is kind of two different factions put in the same banner, but whatever. However, for the most part, a banner rate up that isn't a new ID is based off of whatever specific center instead of whatever specific team. So let's say you wanted to get a sinking team just from rolling. There is no banner that gives you purely sinking oriented units that will be enough to build an entire team. You need to get a Faust rate up banner, Ishmael, Rogia, Heathcliff, Wheatus, and Gregory, excluding Yisong's Walpurgis ID that you would need to wait for the Walpurgis banner to get. And that would be just based off of those centers as banners and how long it took for all of them to be out from July to December. Almost half a year to get a team you would want. And you would need to do all of that to get a working sinking team instead of just rolling on a banner to just get sinking oriented units. And even then, the amount of non-sinking IDs you'd get on those character banners is insane, which is why Limbus is a game that, when it comes to rolling, prioritizes you to like the character before the ID. But it's inherently flawed to do so, because let's say I really like Dawn and want Manager Dawn, so I roll on the Dawn rate up banner. As I roll, I get W Corp Dawn. If I'm a new player, it doesn't make that much sense to keep rolling on the banner because I already got a usable unit in W Corp Dawn, and getting Manager Dawn would make W Corp not worthless, but I wouldn't exactly be using her. And apply that same logic to all the character banners in the game, stopping at the first identity you get that is good for your team, because it would be, for a new player, unoptimal to roll more. That leaves you with having the most mismatched team ever. So how is this fixed? More mirror dungeons. By sharding you can circumvent this issue. It all comes back to mirror dungeons. And there's just nothing else to do in the game. So if you don't like them or have gone tired of pressing win rate in them for the past 2 years, good luck, there ain't shit else for you to do in Limbus during the dead periods. And if you don't do them, well, you'll have worse and worse identities because there is steady power creep in the game, and good luck on getting new egos. But what if, instead of just placing mirror dungeons as the de facto grind, what if we made a new game mode that can also use that weekly bonus? Like a new game mode that has different gameplay from mirror dungeons, and if you do it, you can use your weekly bonus upon clearing that instead of just using it purely on mirror dungeons, if you've gotten tired of them. It'd be a good way to clear up that weekly grind from just being mirror dungeon win rate simulator and give players who don't really like mirror dungeons something else to do instead. But to do that, well, we need more game modes. And of course, whenever I bring this up, people start to have a discussion about if Project Moon has the development team size for new stuff, and here's the thing, right? You know what I'd want to see added to the game as something more to do? A boss rush challenge. Think like a bi-weekly thing where you go in, fight some bosses back to back, clear them out, you get some rewards. Mainly like EXP and Thread, because Luxes don't give you too many of those, but also wouldn't really be against the idea of getting some boxes. And I don't think I'm alone in wanting this. A bit ago I made a Twitter post gauging interest in it, and most people said it'd be cool. And you know what the funny part is? This is already in the game. In Mirror Dungeon 5, the new railway packs literally are built to go from one boss fight to the next boss in a boss rush way. We straight up already have the code for it put in the game. All they'd have to do is change the bosses every now and then, and also make a UI for selecting it, both of which shouldn't really take that much effort. I mean, ideally a boss rush like that can also maybe have a trial team setup specifically for the fight, so new players can try out units they don't got in that, and older players wouldn't just be able to steamroll it with their current teams and could have some challenge, or hell, maybe make it so you could use the trial team or your regular team. And this is a change that I'm not gonna say is perfect or would revolutionize the game and Project Moon needs to do it now to cure world hunger, but it's something people seem to be interested in. And we already have the code in the game to do it, but they just haven't. It's a change that, even at this size, is entirely possible, but nothing. Which just makes me wonder, what is Project Moon doing? Like, the game has a lack of content and concerns with other aspects of it, like the over-reliance on mirror dungeons and the gacha system playing into that, while also not being friendly to new players. And some fixes to these problems seem pretty easy, like, we already have a faction banner for Blade Lineage, why not just do that for more factions or specific status effects team? We need more content, why not just use your already existing code to make a boss rush game mode? Like, there are problems I have with Limbus on a more base level of the game, namely the gameplay systems and how those are, but suggesting changes to that is fucking huge, so I wouldn't sit here and really say anything like that is easy to change. But this is nowhere near that. The changes are minimal but would help so much. Hell, I'd say making banners which are specific to faction or statuses would make them a shit ton of money, because people would feel that rolling on those is much better to get what they're looking for as opposed to just character banners. Not that they gotta get rid of those either, they can have both. But most people already say to save your rolls for the limited banner. Why not sweeten up the banners to give players reasons to roll on something non-limited? And it's been 2 years, but none of these changes have been made. Hell, not many changes period have been made. Most of the updates have just been new story, which is again the strongest point of the game, but it doesn't feel like much was put into the uptake of the game. Now again, this video isn't a doom post about the game. By all metrics, it's already been a huge success, one that despite anything, keeps growing. To suggest the game is about to die is completely off base. Hell, a part of me doesn't think they'd let the game die, as Project Moon has shown immense care to the story they want to tell. Hell, these are the same motherfuckers who got scammed for the English translation of Lobotomy Corporation, which almost bankrupted them, because that was shortly after they changed from just a high school coding group. They survived that and went on to still have the game translated into English and built into the world we have now. I deadass think they have Team Mika levels of care for this shit. If Limbus were to somehow only be pulling in 20k per month, I still think they'd dedicate their support to it to tell the story they want. But this video is centered around one worry, which is the fact that we have these problems in the game now and not many are really talking about them due to the continued reaction we've seen to criticism. Which again, I haven't even fully dived into. Dear God, I've witnessed pretty much all of my friends who have criticized this game be harassed. Either if they criticize the game, the company, the story, I've seen all of them get harassed. However, over time, the flaws of the game will only become more apparent. We're 2 years into the game with only 2 new game modes being added. What's to say this is going to change for year 3 or 4? Especially considering year 2 brought no new game modes at all. And are people fully and entirely fine with the game just sticking to weekly mirror dungeons and doing your Luxes daily in between new stories for the next however many years are planned for Limbus? Or do you think, eventually, it will get to a point where people are fed up with the game and most talks about it will be doom posting or anger over the state of it? Because I think the latter is quite likely. But it doesn't need to be. I don't see why we can't just have a normal chat about the game and where it's headed and what our concerns are. Because everyone cares about the game. We wouldn't be playing it if we fucking didn't. But a lot of the times criticism is brought up, people don't want to hear it or provide really disingenuous takes about it. I don't see why we can't just listen to what people have to say. Now that's not to say you need to agree with every criticism, God no. Everyone's got their own tastes and perspectives about what they want out of the game, but how they tackle their perspectives is weird. Like, when I say I want to see more content from Limbus, a lot of people say they like how relaxed and laid back the game is. Doesn't feel like a job, which most other gachas are. Therefore, they don't really want to see more content or else it'd become a job, which is a very valid concern. But asking for new game modes doesn't automatically make it a job. Like, they can make that boss rush and have the rewards of it be nothing as substantial as lunacy or an abundance of crates, making it something that would give you some EXP and threads. If that was done, players wouldn't feel forced to have to do it, but those that want to play the game will have more to play. Or hell, fuck making a new combat game mode, why not make fun minigames or some other bullshit like that? I ain't saying we gotta pull the Genshin route where all endgame content is minigames, but shit, we could introduce something else that's not combat, but would give the players something new to play. Like, instead of immediately writing off asking for more content as you don't want to see the game become a job, maybe we can all discuss what are the game modes we'd like to see from a game that wouldn't immediately make it a job. and what the rewards of it could be to where it doesn't feel like a job. It's like, look at integrated strategies in Arknights. Roguelike game mode, we got 5 different versions of them. The first was a beta. All of them, except for the beta, have a big battle pass in them to level up and get the rewards from them. But guess what? I haven't finished any of those battle passes. Why? Because they're permanent. There's no limited content here. I can clear it when I want and how I want, so it doesn't feel like a job. It feels like content I can interact with whenever I want to. If I just want to play the game, I can just play IS and get rewards from that. What if Limbus did something similar? A game mode that has a lot of content in it with permanent rewards so you, as a player, can interact with that whenever you want. It's more content that doesn't make the game a job. But here's the thing. If you don't want that, that's really all that matters. My perspective isn't more important than yours. I just want the community to be at a point where everyone is ready to at least listen to others' criticism, which I'm not saying just the PM community is like this or that everyone in the community can't listen to criticism of the game, because I think the same issue can be found in many other games as well. Now, that's not to say all criticism is good. Sometimes developers really need to say no because it's the age-old saying. Players are really good at identifying a problem, but nowhere near as good as solving it. So I'm not saying any criticism is something you need to treat like the Bible, but I am saying that it's good for the health of the game to listen to what people have to say and propose your own ideas as to why you agree or disagree with them. Not within the essence of attacking someone or trying to make what you have to say smarter than what they have, but so discussion can further and faults of the game, any game really, can actually be said and fixed. As here's the thing. When Limbus Company launched, I was beyond hopeful for it. My review I made back then called it almost a masterpiece. You want to know the reason as to why? It held so much promise. I mean shit, it did something 99% of gachas fail at. The beginning story was actually fucking good. Not just serviceable, good. And there was a promise when it came to the team building and how in-depth it can become, which has also panned out nicely. Because despite any problems I have with the combat, the team building is just PEEM. But the main reason I had so much high praise was that the game had an amazing starting point for a gacha. It had so much promise. But 2 years later, I personally don't think it really evolved much, and some of the problems it had on launch are still present. That's not to say it's gone worse, because the good has still gone better. Story better, both visually and by writing. Mirror dungeons, much more in depth than how they used to be. And combat mechanics, coins used to be a 70% chance to roll heads on max. Sweet, fuck, I'm glad they changed that. But some of the problems I brought up in this video existed for a while now, which I think needs to be addressed. And not because I think the game is dying. I mean, Jesus, even if Limbus fucking pulled in 2 cents and some chewed up gum as monthly revenue, I think Jahoon would sell a kidney before shutting down the servers, and the player numbers are not going to be decreasing anytime soon. But I think the problems need to be addressed so players don't get to a point of doom posting over the game, but also because us as players deserve more. The game makes millions. We've shown immense support for the company, maybe at times a little too much considering how Project Moon fans have become the new JoJo fans, but we all love the game. So I think discussion about how the thing we love can improve shouldn't be shunned. I think it's something any community should be upfront with talking about. People shouldn't be slandered because they spoke their mind. If you disagree with what they have to say, explain why going against their points, not them as a person. Like hell, another example. I did a stream a bit ago, and in the comments I pointed out how Limbus has dead months. From there I got some disingenuous replies, others with good points that made me reassess some of my criticisms, which was really nice. But fast forward a bit, I'm gonna make this as vague as possible, but I'm checking out something Limbus related and I see someone talking about my criticisms in the comment section of that stream. And then when talking about it, they said we haven't really had a single dead week this season. What the fuck are they talking about? Consult the calendar, this shit is factually incorrect. Then said my opinions towards the game have no respect and that they're dated by Library of Arena. Cool. All of my criticisms there were about the live service model of the game. Arena wasn't a live service and I never mentioned it once. What are we doing here? Well, that's what I'm talking about. I can say the game doesn't have a lot of content, and instead of actually going against that point, people find the need to lie about it and then say I just hate the game and have no respect for it. Alright, cool. Here's the thing, you always see people pop off when devs listened, but people get mad when others give feedback for devs to listen to. Having respect for the game isn't built off of never once giving it honest feedback and saying everything about it is peachy perfect. Having respect is seeing a problem with it and saying why you feel it needs to be changed for the health of the game. But I think I see where that mentality of being against criticism comes from. For games in general, yes, people don't love their favorite game being criticized because they view it as an insult against the art. That's true for any game. But I think Project Moon is in a unique position. For a couple of reasons. Yes, the developers are very authentic with the community. I mean, dear God, you normally don't see a CEO of a company pull out a fucking VTuber avatar for a promotional livestream or be in a completely unofficial community-made server. So yes, that closeness can definitely fuel people to want to defend them more. But another reason is, we've seen Project Moon make very brash changes, like nerfing so many fights less than 5 hours after they've been out, all the stuff with Dawnglare, all the shit with Ring Song 2. And to be honest, when it comes to community perspective, the Velmore situation probably also contributes to the Western community's perspective of criticism as well, because of everything that happened from that, with a spark of it being incels mad at no swimsuits. Which, by the way, tangent, as the person who made the video talking about it, guys, incels mad at no swimsuits wasn't the actual cause of the controversy, or at least not the main. That's how it was reported, but when you look at the boards where the controversy started, sure, some brought it up as a negative, but it was in addition to all of the other problems people had about the game at the time. It was not the sole cause for it. I don't know if I didn't make that clear enough, because I still see so many people saying that was the entire cause. I thought I pointed out how yes, some were mad at that, but in total, it was a stick in the fire over how people felt about the game at that time. The actual controversy really started when one asset who had a vendetta against Velmori, who was hated on the forums, decided to scroll through Velmori's Twitter to find something to hurt her reputation. People were mad prior to that only due to the state of the game, and all of that anger was pointed at the company. Just in case I didn't make that clear, wanted to say it again. But the Western perspective has been it started off of dog shit criticisms of no swimsuits. But when you look at these situations, it does help point out why the community is maybe averse to criticisms being said about the game, as there's that close connection between the players and the company, and people don't want to ruin that. So when they see big situations happen because players are unhappy about the game, many, I think, want to quell that fire before it really becomes something big, as in the past we've seen criticisms be said and then boil over into huge controversies. So maybe there's the idea that if more stuff like that happens, developers will not want to be as close to the community. But I don't think criticism should inherently be seen as something which will attack that connection. In fact, I think it's something that can strengthen it. It's like, remember when they made the changes to the Battle Pass to where you could only buy it with lunacy due to Steam's bullshit? Almost everyone unanimously complained because there was no easy way to get the exact amount of lunacy needed to buy the Battle Pass. And on that same day, PM changed it to where there was a pack that gave the exact amount of lunacy needed to get it in the same exact price. And stuff like that, changes on the same exact day to what the players want, it's rare as hell to actually see, which then helps build the connection between the players and the developers. But what doesn't is when players try to give feedback about the game and others try to tear down that feedback or make very disingenuous arguments about it. So that's what this video aims to hopefully help. I just want the community to be at a point where we can have a discussion about the game without people being attacked as a person due to them not saying the game's perfect. From there, discussion can further and we can all point out where we believe Limbus Company needs to improve, and hopefully the game we love can get better.
Little pup, your head is in